Now, 7 o'clock on the dot, we'll call this meeting of the Torrance Unified School District Board of Education to order. We've been in closed session, we've been across the street, we've kind of trekked across most of the Western Hemisphere, but we are back here now. Welcome to everyone here, and I would like to call up Lowell Hardison to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Up here, at the podium, please, sir.
She think, see, this is like my life, right? I think I'm.
We might just make him do it officially.
This is a little more elaborate than the 5th grade that I took. Ready? Begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
Good. Do I have a motion to adopt the agenda?
So moved. Sorry.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Good. There's no report out of closed session items, so we're good there. Staff presentation and information. 8.1, update on the governor's proposed budget for 2019/2020. Michelle McKay Underwood from School Services will give us an informative PowerPoint presentation.
It will definitely be an informative presentation, and hopefully it'll even be an informative PowerPoint presentation.
We don't have it from
Perfect.
projector yet.
Ta-da. Thank you so much. All right. So thank you very much for having me again this year. I wanted to give you an overview of the governor's proposal for the 2019-20 state budget, and specifically for K-12 education. There will be a little bit of an overview of the economics of the nation and the state. I'll go through that relatively quickly, and then we'll get into really the meat of the presentation, which is the proposals for schools through Proposition 98 and some proposals provided outside of Proposition 98. And then we'll talk through the next steps in terms of the state budget. So jumping right in, this is obviously Governor Gavin Newsom's first state budget, and this really lays the groundwork and signals his governing style, his philosophy, his outlook for the next 4 years. We knew, we saw Governor Newsom through the campaign, but this is really his first opportunity to put his plans into a state budget. And so we see significant priorities for him for early childhood education, for higher education, and a continuation of the local control funding formula and investing in education through Proposition 98. We see that Proposition 98, the funding for schools, the growth is starting to slow down. There were significant increases in funding through the recession, but as our funding formula, the local control funding formula, goes into more of a maintenance mode through a cost of living adjustment in the upcoming budget, we know there will be squeezes on district budgets as costs continue to escalate. So we need to be aware of that. There are some significant new proposals, some within Proposition 98 and education, some outside that are helpful for schools. And we see that accountability continues to be a priority for this governor as he continues our current accountability evolution. So jumping into, again, the economic picture for the U.S., we obviously need to know how the economy at the U.S. level impacts us in California, and so we always keep an eye on how revenues are coming in and the economic outlook. And sort of long story short, Governor Brown came into a significant state budget problem. We were in the midst of the recession, and what he he needed to do was really right the ship through the Great Recession and through our recovery. And he has really restored our fiscal health. And Governor Newsom really benefits from that by having a significant rainy day fund, more than $15 billion. That's established through Proposition 2, as well as having significant one-time expenditures. So he's trying to be prudent with the revenues that he has by buying down some debt, both at the state level and also to the benefit of schools. So again, we see a slowdown in Proposition 98 as a result of just not being in that recovery mode at the state and national level. We continue to see full employment with additional new jobs coming in at the state level, significant increases in this past December. Unemployment rate remains very low, 3.9%, and you really have significant growth in terms of employment. We're always very aware of how the housing market is, because it was such a precursor to the last recession, and so there's a little bit of just sort of lack of robustness in the housing market, but it remains steady, and we do see that that consumer spending continues in a positive direction. So all good, positive economic outlook data points at the U.S. level. We always, though, need to be aware of risks to the national economy, and so we've listed out some here that folks want to make sure that we're all sort of aware of. When we looked back to the last recession, there weren't really any indicators that it was coming. So we need to be aware of things that could bring us to a slowdown or potentially a next recession. And so we need to be aware of continued trade tensions between China and the U.S. We saw that just today with some reaction in the stock market to trade talks between the U.S. and China. The Federal Reserve, there's always interest, again, at the stock market level for the interest rate actions, whether they're expected or unexpected. And then we also really need to be aware of the federal government budget deficits. The federal deficit has increased significantly, which requires more and more dollars to be spent to service that debt, which crowds out other federal programs. Another thing that we need to be aware of as a risk to the national economy is if the federal shutdown continues, and what ripple effects that would have if we get to the point where folks aren't getting food assistance or things of that nature. So another thing for us to be aware of at the national level. In terms of the California economy, again, we see continued growth, but growth at a lower level compared to the growth that we saw coming out of the Great Recession. We rely on three major factors for our continued growth at the California level. So job growth, increasing wages, and contained inflation. The budget assumes that we continue in a positive direction, but again, we're not seeing the same kinds of year-over-year growth that we did through the recovery period. We also need to look at risks at the California level in terms of the economy, and some of them are the same that we saw at the federal level, of course. So if we have policy conflicts with the federal government, which we have seen through the last legislature and into potentially conflict into the next administration. Again, we've seen that volatility of the stock market, especially at the end of the year, but some days are worse than others. And, other issues that the governor has laid out, as well as the UCLA Anderson forecast. So we look at the UCLA School of Business, the Department of Finance, and the Legislative Analyst's Office to see, what are the economic pictures looking like. They're concerned about the new NAFTA that has not yet been approved by Congress, again, as well as concerns with trade tensions between the U.S. and China. So in turn, we'll get to the Proposition 98 portion of the budget here in a minute, but we do know that there are several significant proposals outside of Proposition 98 that we wanted to make sure that you are aware of, because they can affect school districts as employers. So there is a proposal, the beginning of a proposal for an expanded paid family leave program with the intent that a child would have 6 months with 2 caregivers. So between maybe a set of parents or a parent and a close relative, that child would have 6 months of development. Movement towards universal health care by creating an individual mandate here in California to replace the federal mandate that is no longer there. Also significant proposals in housing. That's been a big concern for the legislature in California, and Governor Newsom is attempting to address that issue. And Governor Newsom also has some significant proposals in higher education, trying to help improve the time of degree completion from when a student goes into college and when they graduate. So as we jump into the education budget, I want to lay the groundwork first of what's not in the budget, so you don't think that I've just forgotten them. What we see this year as we change administrations from Governor Brown to Governor Newsom is really a very short timeline to put the budget together. There was definitely transition work that happened between the outgoing and the incoming administration, but the timeline for state budget development is usually much longer. So there's just sort of a lack of detail, especially in some of the most important proposals like special education. Unfortunately, we don't have a significant increase in existing special education dollars. There is no money or plan provided for increasing local control funding formula target rates, something that has been a big priority for the Torrance Unified District. That will be potentially a legislative, or will be a legislative conversation, but is not included in this budget. And we also don't have any funds for one-time discretionary purposes. So one of the things that you could rely on from Governor Brown was that he would put in as much as he could for the LCFF, and then the remaining dollars would mostly go into discretionary funds, and those would be used by the local district for discretionary purposes. Governor Newsom has not proposed that. So as I mentioned, Proposition 98 growth is slowing. The increase year over year is 3.6%. That Proposition 98 growth is partially slowed down by declining enrollment statewide. If we were in a growing enrollment situation, Proposition 98 would be going up more. So 98 isn't going down, but the increase isn't as great as if we weren't in a declining enrollment situation. We also see that really there's not a lot within the budget aside from the LCFF proposal and a special education proposal that we'll talk about. So again, you see here year-over-year growth of Proposition 98. Again, 3.6% increase in Proposition 98 of $2.8 billion. Again, we have actually a decrease in the minimum guarantee in the current year and last year as they recompute things, again, because of declining enrollment tends to bring that Proposition 98 guarantee down. So turning to the biggest pot of funds that's provided to schools, the local control funding formula. The state budget proposes fully funding the LCFF with a cost of living adjustment of 3.46%. That is a $2 billion increase on the LCFF, bringing total LCFF funding to $63 billion. The per ADA rate sort of depends on local considerations, but it's about $343 per ADA statewide. Again, that rate will differ a little bit if districts have things like transportation or other particular categorical programs. So here we have our current best estimate of the Torrance Unified per pupil rates based on the governor's budget and assuming that cost of living adjustments are funded in the out years. So one thing that's really changing from implementation of the LCFF to sort of maintenance of the LCFF is the rate of increase of districts. So as we transitioned from our old system of revenue limits and categoricals to the new system of the LCFF, there were some districts that needed significant increases based on their local demographics and others that didn't need quite so much. And so what we saw was significant gap closure in addition to cost of living adjustments. Now that districts have reached full implementation of what Governor Brown decided was full implementation of the LCFF. Now everyone's receiving that cost of living adjustment, and it's the same from district to district. And so we see districts receiving that same percentage increase, and those years of significant differential increases, depending on the demographics locally of the districts, have gone away. So you'll see again, comparing a district with low unduplicated pupil percentages versus medium versus high. There were some years that had, nearly approximately 20% increases in those years where we were both significantly closing the gap from the old system to the new, as well as cost of living adjustments. But again, now that we're sort of in that far right-hand column, 2019-20, all districts are receiving a cost of living adjustment and not any gap closure, since according to Governor Brown, there is no gap that needs closing. So again, LCFF, the biggest chunk of Proposition 98 dollars, but a significant proposal that's funded outside of Proposition 98 is to try and help alleviate the CalSTRS employer contribution rate increases. So over the course of the past several years, in order to fully fund CalSTRS and make them solvent and whole, employers' rates, contribution rates have been increasing significantly, back from an 8.25% historical rate up to now nearly 20%. So what Governor Newsom has proposed is to spend $3 billion of dollars outside of Proposition 98 to try and help alleviate some of that unfunded liability. So $700 million would help to reduce the increase in the employer contribution rate, which would help Torrance for about $1 million in savings each year compared to current law. And then $2.3 billion would be funded and sent directly to CalSTRS to try and, again, alleviate that unfunded liability at the sort of macro level. And that would also have the effect of decreasing the employer contribution rate by 0.5% in the out years. So, sort of in the big scheme of things, there's still quite significant increases compared to our historical rates, but it is better than without this proposal. And there's been a lot of advocacy trying to get the legislature to help with this significant cost, and this is the proposal that is before us. And so you'll see the top line is current law, so that's AB 1469, the current CalSTRS full funding plan. The line underneath it is what would happen if Governor Newsom's proposal was put into place. So you'll see the numbers again are better, though again still far outstripping that 8.25% historical rate. So this would be helpful for districts if this proposal were put into place. And these are current law or CalSTRS current estimates of what those out year costs would be. So special education really is the other significant proposal. We had LCFF, we talked about CalSTRS, and special education is a significant proposal within Proposition 98, $576 million, some ongoing, some one-time, to try and help students with disabilities. These would be for supplemental services outside of a student's individualized educational plan, sort of those core special education dollars, and wouldn't go out on the current funding formula, sort of that regionalized approach that we're used to for special education dollars, but it would actually go out directly to districts and those with the highest percentages, higher percentages of both unduplicated pupils as well as students with disabilities. So very different sort of theoretical approach to putting special education dollars out into the education, into school districts. So this is probably the most controversial proposal that's in there, just because there aren't too many proposals, and this one will definitely have a lot of conversations up in Sacramento as people debate whether this is the right way to spend funds for students with disabilities, or if there should be an infusion in our current funding structure for students with disabilities. So right now, again, as I mentioned, a lot of unknowns, especially in this proposal, but from what we understand and sort of extrapolating, if they used some figures that we know in terms of concentration grants, it would be unlikely that Torrance would significantly benefit, if benefit at all, from this proposal. So something for us to be aware of for sure. The existing special education funding formula, which we refer to as AB 602, that funding structure continues with the cost of living adjustment. There is unfortunately no proposal to significantly increase or equalize those rates that are quite disparate around the state of California. That'll, however, be a legislative conversation. In terms of career technical education, no proposals provided by Governor Newsom in January. So the current structure of $300 million in two different pots continues. There still could be legislative proposals or potentially a proposal from Governor Newsom and the mayor revision further down the line. But as of this point, no proposed changes. I mentioned earlier that there is no discretionary grant funding that's being provided. There are very few one-time dollars to speak of just because of the way Proposition 98 growth is slowing down. But those one-time dollars that the governor does have, he's using in special education and a couple other smaller pots. So no specific discretionary per ADA dollars. Again, something that we've come really to become accustomed to from Governor Brown are these discretionary dollars, and it does not appear to be the case under Governor Newsom. Facilities funding, Governor Brown was not, I can say this, a fan of the current structure on facilities, and so he really squeezed in terms of how many Proposition 51 dollars he was allowing to go out. So a very significant proposal from Governor Newsom, $1.5 billion of bond sales for Proposition 51, acknowledging that more sales and more projects needs more people, $1.2 million to help for 10 additional positions at the Office of Public School Construction, and then $750 million one-time, also non-Proposition 98 dollars for full-time kindergarten facilities. So there's the current year $100 million to try and address the issue of districts that aren't currently offering full-time kindergarten. This $750 million would continue that program with an additional infusion of resources. You've probably heard a lot about the early childhood and early care and education proposal from Governor Newsom. Sort of the long story short on this is that the proposal would affect non-school district, non-LEA providers by putting those slots, those preschool slots outside of Proposition 98. They're using non-Proposition 98 dollars, and they're able to grow more than if they were doing that within Proposition 98. But we know there's a lot of discussion around this item, so we wanted to make sure you were aware of that aspect. The accountability structure that is sort of evolving and currently in place, Governor Newsom does not make any changes to. There are additional funds that he's proposing for county offices to help districts that need additional help and have been identified through the dashboard as needing additional help. But in terms of continuity in the accountability system, Governor Newsom has not made significant changes. So the road ahead, this is really the beginning of the state budget conversation. Governor Newsom puts out his proposal. The legislature will react. They will have their own proposals to discuss. As we learn about Governor Newsom and sort of his priorities, we're also going to need to learn how he negotiates with the legislature. The leaders in the Assembly and the leader in the Senate have been through state budget negotiations before. Their term limits, especially on the Assembly speaker, are longer than Governor Newsom, so they have a potential to have many, many state budget conversations for the foreseeable future. So it'll be an interesting dynamic between Governor Newsom, who's new to these negotiations compared to those who have been there before. And the other thing that we need to be aware of is, again, we got very used to the consistency between January, the May revision, and the final budget, and we just don't know how much change there will be. And we should actually anticipate change because we don't have all the details at this point. So here's just a quick little caption of the process from here until the May revision. So the budget came out on January 10th. The details, especially the details of the special education proposal, will be coming out in early February. Already the Senate and the Assembly are having overview budget hearings. Really getting into the details of the subcommittees will come up through the spring, with really no decisions being made until after the May revision, when we get updated revenue picture as well as some changes to the policy proposals. in terms of, sort of the legislature's priorities, these have been very consistent from under the Brown administration to the Newsom administration. But what we've seen is that Governor Brown, there were some items that he just wasn't interested in doing. ECE, this was not a priority for him. The legislature really had to pressure him to have more preschool slots. Facilities, again, has not been a priority, had not been for Governor Brown, but we know the legislature is already starting discussions about a bond on the 2020 and 2022 ballot. Again, Governor Brown did not want to set aspirational targets for the LCFF. However, the legislature and your local legislature, Assemblymember Maritsucci, has already introduced legislation to try and set those aspirational targets for the LCFF. Special education, this will be sort of the legislature side of that conversation to try and equalize existing special education funding, have additional resources for preschoolers with disabilities, as well as to have additional funding for students with the most severe and costly disabilities. And then in terms of charter schools, that again has been an area that Governor Brown just had no interest in tackling, and we know that there's a lot of pent-up demand for increased restrictions on charter schools, and so we anticipate a lot of bills coming out on charter schools. So another part in the process is for the Legislative Analyst's Office to come back with their initial response. And as we were putting this presentation together, that wasn't quite clear yet. But what we have learned since then, as their response has been developed, is that they like the consistency of continuing the LCFF instead of switching to a completely new funding formula. So they think that's beneficial for districts. They're not sure about the special education proposal and whether sort of the goals that were laid out in the state budget really match up with the proposal that has been put forth in the governor's budget proposal. They also suggest using the $700 million for CalSTRS in a different way, instead of buying down the employer contribution rate to simply just send it over to CalSTRS, keep your guys' rates as they are, and allow that to help, again, try and increase investment returns in the out years. So they have sort of a different idea. One of the interesting things that we've learned from the LAO also is that the revenue picture between the LAO and the Department of Finance is pretty similar. So I don't think we'll see that same kind of tug of war between the legislature and the administration in terms of revenue forecast. But we also see from the LAO that there's a very thin margin in terms of Proposition 98 budgeting. What we saw under Governor Brown was significant portions of the budget invested in one-time resources, like we were talking about, those billions of dollars that were sent out on a one-time basis. There just isn't Proposition 98 ongoing growth really to do that, and so we see Governor Newsom spending all the dollars and just having less of a buffer in case Proposition 98 comes down in the middle of the year, or in case the cost of living adjustment goes up. So there will be, I think, potentially more push and pull within Proposition 98 if the revenues don't come in as expected, or if the cost of living adjustment goes up and it costs more to do the LCFF. There's just not much room, margin for error in the budget. So sort of my closing thoughts, this is Governor Newsom's mark. He's making his mark. He's trying to distinguish himself from Governor Brown. He is honoring the LCFF and Governor Brown's legacy, but he's not going above and beyond to put more money into it. He's really focusing on early childhood education and some more progressive ideas through parental leave and health care and working towards housing. We do need to acknowledge that the CalSTRS investment and that facilities investment are dollars outside of Proposition 98 that other folks might like to use for themselves. So it's great that those are investments that would benefit our schools. And really we need to realize that this is the beginning of 4 to 8 years with Governor Newsom as we start down this path. So thank you for allowing me to present, and I'd love to answer any questions you might have.
Any questions from the board? Mrs. Liu, Mr. Gerson? I'm hitting buttons. Oh, that's you. That's how, it's been a while here. I'm kind of sorry for ignoring you.
He sees a light in
Mrs.
front of him.
Reagan.
It's someone here.
Okay.
So just as a general picture, it's a kind of a mixed bag. It's better than it has been in the past. And in fact, there's some good things about it, that we're getting a COLA, which we didn't think we were going to get. and the paying down of the STRS, so those are very positive. But we could have hoped for more.
Yeah, there's not a lot there. When you look at the growth in Proposition 98, $2.8 billion, two of that is COLA for K-12. There's a couple $100 million for community colleges because they get a COLA too. You've got the special education proposal, which is really the only new proposal within Proposition 98. And that one, is going to be up for debate for sure about whether that's the best use of special education dollars or dollars for students with disabilities. But then you do have to, see that there are those investments outside of 98 that will be helpful. So I think there's a lot of hope for that.
Well, thank you very much. I'm sure you got a plane to Sacramento in a couple of minutes.
I do.
Yeah,
Not quite a couple of minutes, but I'm hoping for a fast Uber driver, that's for sure.
that's okay. Well, good. Then, may the force be with you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Michelle.
Now is kind of the fun part of the meeting, the good news student presentations, and they'll be from Riviera Elementary and Walteria Elementary. And Dr. Kim, can you do the introductions?
Thank you, President Lee. It's my pleasure to introduce one of our student leaders from Riviera Elementary. Carly Duncan, can you please come on up? Let's give her a round of applause, everyone. Also joining us tonight is the principal of Riviera, Mrs. Christy Forche. Please give us some good news, Carly.
Hi, I'm Carly Duncan, the Student Council President of Riviera Elementary School. Tonight I'm going to talk about the fundraising we do, how much money we usually make, what we do with the money we make, and school activities. One of the fundraisers we do is Student Store, our biggest money maker. Student Store is a store that sells a variety of school supplies and a few educational toys. The Student Store is run by members of the Student Council and is open every Friday at lunchtime. We make an average of $100 per student store, which totals to about $400 per month. Other fundraisers we do throughout the year are selling baked goods at movie night, selling books at the book fair, selling flowers at the talent show. Now let me tell you what we do with the money we make. We pay for items that we sell at Student Store, more equipment for our Spark recesses, and PE. And the money will also go towards a special project on campus. Lastly, school activities. Last Friday we had Rainbow Unicorn Day. Mostly everyone dressed up. Other school activities is Noon Leagues. Noon Leagues are kickball games our umpires and athletic commissioner oversee. They make teams of 4th and 5th graders. Each team has a chance to play the teachers in the final kickball game. Also, younger graders love Snow Day. Snow Day is a special day where we have a truck come and it shreds ice to make small slopes that we can sled on. This is also a great opportunity for older graders as big buddies to have some fun with their little buddies. Have a great night and thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Carly. Next up is our student leader from Walteria Elementary, Janu Jang. Can you please come on up? Give him a round of applause. Also joining us tonight is the principal of Walteria Elementary, Dr. Efren Ponce. Please tell us what's happening, Janae.
Good evening. My name is Junu Jang, and I'm the Student Council President of Walteria Elementary. At my school, we have many enjoyable activities such as sports day or movie night. However, we must remember that school isn't always fun and games. But learning can be fun to students in a certain way. For example, when your class is doing arts and crafts, most of the students would gladly take it over math or science. This is why we have Project Lead. Project Lead is an organization that teaches students about the criminal justice system and the importance of making good decisions. They teach us to stay in school and out of trouble. While they educate us about the criminal justice system, they'll do it in an entertaining way. For example, if they want to teach us about how being in a gang can be, they'll probably set up a small skit and call up random people to play roles. They don't always make it related to the law though. One day, they'll be talking about the juvenile rehabilitation system, and next, they'll be talking about how stereotyping and how it's a bad thing. These are all important things, though. One time, with my experience with Project Lead, we were talking about like net incomes and professional degrees and how more education leads to more money.
Okay.
One question. Why is it called Project Lead? Well, they want you to lead into doing positive things and not slip into doing negative things, such as drugs. Take our principal, for example. He is a kind leader who will do anything for his school and make it better and keep it away from negative things. Just a quick thank you.
Good example.
I really hope that Project Lead can continue to reach out to more kids because they teach the most important things to shape your future. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Report by student representative and recognition, I will call on Mr. Egan. You're supposed to introduce the person next to you. It's a recognition. Oh, but after he introduces him, yes.
Okay, so call on Tyler.
Call on Tyler.
Yeah.
It's Mr. Egan's first meeting, so.
Okay, I got the mic turned on. Introducing from South High School, our student representative, Mr. Tyler Lum, and this is his last evening here with us on his second term, actually. So, Tyler?
Thank you. It's on. All right. Thank you guys for having me the last 2 years. It's been great. These meetings are kind of an eye-opener because when you're on school, you're kind of wondering what's it like in the big leagues or whatever. So this is kind of like the next level. At South High, we just did our pep rally. This is the first time we did it in the gym. So we had about 400 students come watch as our athletic teams competed in some mini games that we had, and we also had performance groups. Upcoming, we're going to have our class comp in February, which is a competition between every grade. We're also going to have Geek Week at the end of the month, which involves robotics, computer science, and we're also going to have a Super Smash Bros. Tournament. So it's a game that every student plays at lunch in big groups. They bring their, I don't know, I don't play that game, but it's like these devices, and yeah, they're cool. So we're having a tournament for them. And upcoming,
Does the principal know about it?
yeah.
Oh, that's good, okay, just making sure.
This is the second time we're doing it. Invites a lot of people, and they get pretty crazy, so it's pretty cool. We're also gonna start our clothing drive pretty soon, and that's what's happening at South. So thank you guys.
Well, good, Tyler, we're gonna give you a gift of high perceived value, and you'll get to keep your name badge, and Tammy's gonna come out and take a picture, and hopefully you will improve it. So there we go.
Thank you.
Wait, don't you owe us a song or dance or something? Or you're supposed to perform for us before you leave?
You know, I don't know if you want to hear me singing. That's I don't want to scar you guys.
That's it, Tyler.
So bad. Cute kid. Yeah. Wonder where he's going to. Betty, is he a senior? Yeah. He was. Yeah. Yep.
Okay, next up is Torrance Education Foundation, Susan Swinburne.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. Well, January at Torrance Education Foundation has a sort of history of being planning time and not a lot going on. Well, there's a lot going on, but there's not a lot to report right now. But we have lots of things coming up. On February 1st, we'll be launching the 15th annual Spectacular card raffle. This year, we have a Lexus, a beautiful Lexus, NX 300H hybrid SUV donated by Toyota for us to auction, and it will be lovely and silver because it's celebrating our silver anniversary this year, 25 years. So thanks to Toyota, and tickets will go on sale on February 1st. We're very grateful to all of our campuses, which each has its own ambassador that helps us provide ticket sales to campus families. And each ticket can be designated by the buyer to produce $20 of $30 for their specific campus or classroom or campus project. So this fundraising is both for TEF's general fundraising pot and also for each school able to raise money for priorities at their own campus. So that's coming up. Wait for more. There will be more coming. The other thing I'd like to say is that we have opened registration for South Bay Enrichment Academy Summer School for high school students. It opened last week. It's open and ready now. There are some of these flyers on the table outside, but you can also find information at our website, which is www.tef4kids.org, and look for summer classes. We will be opening gate registrations on February 1st, and then registrations for both elementary and middle schools, and also our afternoon programs for elementary and middle schools will be opening in the middle of February. There will be announcements on our website, and there will be announcements by email to our school families. So that's all coming up. We are still accepting applications from teachers who might want to teach with us during the summer, and that is also, information about that is also available on our website. So we encourage everyone to be in touch about summer school. We had a terrific new partnership, which I don't think I mentioned yet before, with the Dodgers this last fall. We had camps where folks could sign up to send their kids off to Dodgers softball and baseball camp. So it was a first-time partnership that we're going to be continuing and growing. And I thank Dr. Stowe for connecting me with someone at the Dodgers who wanted to work with us. So that's exciting and fun. And all the participants received a discount on their registration, and for each registration, TEF received a contribution from the Dodgers, too. So that's good, and there'll be more coming for that. We have scholarships open now. I know that the school-wide scholarship application process is underway, and there are scholarships sponsored by Torrance Ed Foundation available to students, one of which is our newest scholarship, which honors Dee Hardison, who we lost a year and a half ago, but we have a wonderful scholarship in her name. And I want to make everyone aware that there's a very special afternoon of celebration of Dee's life. Dee was a founding member of the Ed Foundation 26 years ago. On March 3rd at the Historical Society, there are some of these flyers out on the table as well. It will be the premiere showing of a video memorializing many of her accomplishments, and an opportunity to see the new display about her life in Torrance and her contributions to the education community and the whole community here. And I have it on good authority that the refreshments will include her famous peanut brittle. So no fee, no RSVP, just show up at the Historical Society on Sunday, March 3rd.
What's the time for that, Susan?
2 o'clock to 5 o'clock. Yes, 2 to 5. Can I answer any questions?
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah. Report from the Torrance Council of PTAs, Nanette Nolan.
Yay. We're going to clap for everybody.
You guys, you guys don't clap normally. You guys must be something in the water.
They're a rambunctious group
I
tonight.
know. You know, hyped up. We start talking budgets and legislation. Well, thank you for allowing me to be here tonight. I'll be super, super quick. Speaking of scholarships, we are, any member of PTA, seniors that is, they can actually qualify for scholarships. And when they apply at their high school, they also are entered essentially in their middle school and elementary schools in Torrance as well. So we hope that We had a really huge turnout, actually. I think our biggest turnout ever last year in terms of applications. And I know that a lot of the high schools, North High for one, doubled the amount of scholarships awarded. So I hope that high school seniors definitely take that. I mean, it's 10 little bucks. You get other little perks throughout the year, but PTA members are loved on. And then they can also apply for scholarships above us at the Torrance Council level, at the state and national level. So it's pretty cool. Aside from that, speaking of college-bound students, we have a college and career fair coming up on February 23rd. That's a Saturday. This year we're hosting it at West High, and that's in partnership with TUSD. It'll be from 11 to 2, and it's going to be awesome. We have Ivy Leagues there. We'll have local community colleges, small private universities, large private universities, out of state. We'll also have trade schools and armed services, representatives from the armed services coming. Armed forces? I don't even know anymore. I had a Coast Guard husband. I should know that. Anywho, it's going to be great. And then we'll also host several free workshops, and it's free and open to the public and even to those outside of Torrance, because it's amazing. I think last year drew around like 800 or 900 folks, so we're hoping for an even bigger turnout. So that's it. I don't know if you guys have any questions. I did such a thorough job. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Torrance Teachers Association Initial Proposal for 2018-2019, Julie Schenkel.
Yeah, if anybody needs to leave.
So bargaining team right here, let's get everyone. We're going to get all of our members in here with us.
Move them this way, they can be on TV.
Come on. Oops, so sorry. Yes.
Ooh, they're stuck.
Come on in, we want everyone to be able to get in.
What do you got over there?
Yeah, I got an extra one. You got one?
We've got people lined up out in the hallway as well.
Let's go like that. Then you got my slobber on there. Oh, you want this one? I don't have slobber on that one.
Sorry. Okay.
Good evening, President Lee,
we're
members
never-
of the board, TUSD administrators, fellow teachers, parents, and students. I am Julie Schenkel. I am the chair of the TTA negotiations team. TTA leadership and members come tonight to present our initial contract proposal for our reopeners for the 2018-19 school year. Tonight, we affirm that TTA believes in the collective bargaining process. We come to the table in good faith to find resolutions to issues and problems that are in our common interests to resolve for the betterment of all of our students and our classrooms. We will always seek ways to find movement and continue bargaining in good faith. We, along with our TTA Board of Directors and TTA Representative Council, represent over 1,100 bargaining unit members in Torrance Teachers Association. We are their exclusive bargaining agent, and we do indeed speak on behalf of all of our members. This new negotiation cycle, as we do each cycle, we bring forward legitimate issues that we have spent months collecting from our membership through site meetings, surveys, union hall and small group meetings, and our representative council meetings. It is our belief that in seeking resolution to our teachers' issues, we are doing our part to make sure our students have the public schools they deserve. We expect that we can work together for the best interest of our students and educators in our district. I'd like to take a few moments to introduce our TTA negotiations team and board members who are with us tonight. They've committed countless hours in collecting data, discerning it, and giving direction in creating this initial proposal. So tonight we have Deb Tabush, Lisa Hamilton, Kim Lee, Amy Irwin, Teresa Brown, Dawn Glavich, Stephanie Kotoff, and Mark Pasusic from our board. I'd also like to give a special thank you and shout out to all of our members who came tonight to support us. And we are ready to roll up our sleeves and get to work to do the necessary work for our local and for our students, because we are one. We are TTA.
Thank you. I've got to read out, as you are aware, state law provides that we hold a hearing for public input regarding the Torrance Teachers Association initial proposal for 2018/2019 before the board gives us initial response to the proposal. Copies of the proposal will be available to the public in all city libraries and in the Human Resources Department. Time for public comment on the proposal will be provided at an upcoming Board of Education meeting. Thank you. Okay. And we will go now to item 18.7, Torrance Unified School District Academic Dashboard Information. Dr. Crumpy.
Good evening. Tonight's presentation is a combination of an explanation of the yet new again academic dashboard. They've changed it from the initial rollout last year, in addition to the achievement of the Torrance Unified School District for last school year. They're making a lot of the information readily available, and I think the one nice thing is that they're working very, very hard to make it as relevant, because it's all based on last year's data. So often when we look at our demographics and we look at our achievement, things are multiple years old and they're stale by the time that we get them. And there's been a lot of work that the state has done and then districts have to do to respond to these deadlines. But one of the things that you see is just some initial demographics. While special education is not on this screen, I just wanted to note that it is at 9.8%, which is down a little bit. Just a few years ago, it was at 10.3. So it's actually decreasing just slightly, and it's in addition to the demographics that you see above. Our socioeconomically disadvantaged continues to grow with each year. Also, you see our ethnicities, with Hispanic, Asian, and white being our majority of our ethnicities in the district. And now this takes you to the initial dashboard homepage. So this looks quite a bit different from last year, and what you see here are gauges. And this was done in an attempt from a lot of stakeholder input that the initial dashboard was not very simple for stakeholders and parents to be able to understand. So this is the initial dashboard. If you go into the state and you type in Torrance Unified School District, this is what initially pops up, and you can see a simple little gauge. I'll note that the arrows don't there's no fluctuation in, like, for example, in mathematics and English language arts, you see that we're in the green. That's just smack in the middle of the green. It doesn't move up if it's close to green or to blue, or more move down if it's to yellow. This is just an initial snapshot that gives you a close look at the areas that we're being held responsible for, and then where we are. We're going to take a deeper look as we move through the presentation. The first area that we're held responsible for and that we're focusing on is academic performance. And you see here our English language arts and our mathematics. Same gauge as in the prior slide, but now we're drilling down and there's a little bit more detail. So in addition to us being in the green and good category, you can also see that we've increased from the year before in both English language arts and math. You may recall us discussing quite a bit that while our English language arts scores increase every year as students take the first test to the last test, our math does exactly the opposite. And so we are really pleased that we increased in both, but we increased more in math, because that's decreasing that gap that we're trying to get at. So we're very pleased at those results. We certainly don't want to bridge the gap by decreasing our English language arts scores and increasing our math scores. So we're very pleased by this. You'll also see a quick little glimpse here of all the colors at the bottom. And you can see that there are 0 areas in red. These are our subgroups, but it just gives you a glimpse of how many subgroup categories might be represented in each color. And so I'm going to give you one look now. We're going to just drill down on English language arts one more. And this then takes you and gives you a look at how those subgroups are doing. Okay, again, there's no subgroups in the red. And we're gonna take a closer look at all of these later. But the nice thing about this new dashboard is with each area, you can drill down and get more and more information that helps the district and it helps our individual school sites know how we're doing and what we should be focusing on. Another area in academic performance, we've spoke of this before, but this is the first time that we actually have a color or a status and change, if you will. And this is the college and career indicator. This is a high school only. We're in the green, so we're very pleased for the first time that we're up in the green. This is an aggregate. Remember that the API score that we used to be measured was an aggregate of lots of stuff. This is an aggregate score on what percent of students met an indicator that can be met in many, many ways. It's a little bit complicated, but students can complete their A through G requirements. They can meet or exceed their standards on the Smarter Balanced assessment. They can pass multiple AP exams. They can be dual enrolled, meaning they get El Camino credit and high school credit at the same time. And they can be college and career tech ed completers, meaning they've gone all the way through a program and they've taken that capstone course. So there's lots of different ways that students can meet this, and then this turns into an aggregate score for our students. Moving on to the next area, it's now in academic engagement. And there's two areas here. There's chronic absenteeism. This is in the yellow for us. This is the first time we're seeing this color or this status. Chronic absenteeism is defined as students who are absent 10% of the school year, which, because we go to school for 180 days, is 18 school days or more. So this being new and us seeing it for the first time, we're diving in and digging in and trying to determine how we can improve on this 5.8% of our students that are chronically absent. Why are they happening? Why is it happening? One of the things that we are noticing is that we have more and more students each year who are being taken out of school in the middle, starting very late, leaving early and not finishing the year, and they're going back to visit family in home countries and are gone for more than 18 days. And so we're looking at some of the ed code and board policies and administrative rules and seeing whether we can tackle some of this and continue their education, at least at the K-8 level through independent study. But we're still taking a look at this, and we'll report back a little bit more. We're very pleased. Our graduation rate is in the blue. I know the little mark when it's converted to PDF moved. You may remember this, some of you from last year. The state continues to erroneously report the red subgroup is incorrect. And trust me, even working with the Vice President of the State Board of Ed since July, we are struggling with getting this corrected. South Bay High School, which is a level 14 lockdown facility that is in Torrance, are all wards of the court, which means they're all foster youth. And they are in our dashboard and in our data. We do service the students, but we have absolutely no control over these students. Many of them are there, but the average stay in that facility is 6 months. So most of them are automatically, by the definition of starting and finishing at a place within 4 years, are non-grads. And when we look at that, that's not a subgroup in our district. The third area that we're held responsible for is conditions and climate, and this is suspension rate. This is our second group that is in the yellow. And although the rate is that we suspend 2.4% of our students one or more times, it did increase. And this is different from the state. You may have seen reports that suspensions are down throughout the state. People are very happy. We've looked into this. We actually have had this data on our own since school ended last year. And we're looking at this and trying to act on it. It is not for violence. It's not for fighting. Those are actually the incidences of what you typically think kids are being suspended is actually decreased. This is middle and high school vaping and drug use. And that is increasing, and it is increasing in some of our other community schools, and it's a concern that they're working with the schools on. Finally, and I know this is little, but we do applaud and congratulate our schools for the good work, and we are doing really, really well as a district. We are a strong district in Torrance. But we do want to take note of our subgroups that might be in the orange or the red, and ensure that we're doing everything we can to assist those students in those areas. And not going through all of these, what I think is particularly what we're actually paying a lot of attention to, and you can see maybe some of them that are bolded. If they're bolded on that slide, it means that they were there last year as well. So for example, in ELA and math, students with disabilities have been there 2 years in a row. And so this is a focus that we're having. When we drill down into some specific school areas, we have a new program that was rolled out this year, even before these results went out for middle school, to help these special education students. So we're hoping that some of the proactive work that we've done even before these results came out may help this, and we're taking a look at other areas. When we've kind of made up a rule that we're doing, that when we have a subgroup that is in there 2 or more years, it's going to have its own action in the LCAP, and we're going to be addressing it separately from other areas, as school sites will be doing the same within their single plan. I did want to note and that we do have groups that were here last year and have exited. So our students are significantly in it, and I'm not sure. It's very in alignment on my slide.
Yeah, it is on mine too.
But the socioeconomically disadvantaged students, and that was a big focus that we have had, they were in the orange in both math and English language arts last year. African American in math, homeless and Hispanic in English language arts have all exited. And so, as with Pacific Islander and suspension rate. So we did have subgroups that were included, and then as we focus and we concentrate, we want to also celebrate that we've exited them out of this group. We also have schools that in these subgroups. Uh-oh, I hit my laptop and not the actual one. We do have district schools that are also in the orange. And you can see how many of those schools and that we're working with them. Note that for graduation rate, English language arts, math, our academic indicators, we don't have any schools that are in the orange or red. They're in our suspension rate and chronic absenteeism, which ironically is, as a district, where we are in the yellow. So those are areas that we want to focus on. I also do, though, want to congratulate every school that was noted last year. Adams, Hull, and Wood were in this area in suspension rate last year, have exited. Carr, Hull, Torrance L, and Yukon in English language arts have all exited, and Hull also in mathematics. And so I think that's really impressive that when our schools have the information and are able to use the data to make decisions for their school sites, that they have been successful in increasing enough to move out of the orange or red categories.
In fact, that's probably the most impressive thing that I saw when I went through this, was that we can actually change direction, change focus, refocus on issues, and with the new way to be green and dots and blue dots and orange dots and get through all of this new data, and we had the ability to swing and do what we had to do to get it changed. Kudos to those schools.
And it is nice, I think, and you've heard Mr. Lee kind of joke throughout the years that there used to be 55 slides, but this data wasn't as readily available. And so there were a lot of slides and a lot of information that had to get put together and presented because you couldn't just click on the internet and find it as fast. I mean, we've had this data for, well over a month now, and embargoed, we've had it for about 2 months. So it's almost seems stale at this point because we've been using it for so long already. And so I do think I've said a lot that, having the information is 90% of solving the problem. And so often that we don't have that data, so we don't know how to solve the problem. And so we can problem seek before we can problem solve, and this is good information to have. Finally, our next steps. So as we have presented this information to all of our site administrators in December, they're analyzing this. They've kind of put together this same information for their school sites. They're analyzing where they stand, and they're going back to their current single plan. We're not waiting for next year with this information that we have. So even though at a prior board meeting you've already approved their single plans for the school year, they're going back in with their school site council, with their stakeholders, and saying, based on the data that we've received, is our plan moving forward this year sufficient? Or are there adjustments that we have to make? They are allowed to make simple and subtle adjustments into their plan. If they make major changes, we bring them back to the board. But we're asking them to go in and analyze those actions currently. They'll be then taking this, sites are going to share and get input from their stakeholder groups. So we're going to do this current year, but now we're also starting on next year. So they are going to get inputs from their staff, their school site councils, and their LMAC on what these needs are. Based on the data from our district and their school site, what are the needs that need to be placed into next year's LCAP so that we can bring you positive results when we do this presentation again next year. They're doing that now, and they bring those forward to us on March 4th, where we'll have an initial draft of an LCAP, and they'll be giving us the input to ensure that anything that the schools have said is needed in our LCAP is brought forward, and they'll make note of things that aren't there so we can then have more discussion. As well as Edon, Ben, or I said Dr. Kim and Mr. Egan and myself will be going out to multiple school sites over the next 6 weeks. And when you look at some of our scores, we're actually meeting with a group that the schools are putting together. It includes gen ed and special ed, but to talk about how to help special ed students. Our data is really indicating that. And then you can see a lot of the social emotional pieces. What is it that we can do to support those mental health, chronic absenteeism, suspension rate, pieces? And so we've done so much on academics, and we're going to continue with those, but we want to be talking to our counselors, some of the support staff at school sites. So we're going to be doing that throughout the next 6 weeks and bringing that information back as we revise the LCAP as well.
Thank you very much. Any questions from the board?
Question. On the subgroups, do some of these subgroups overlap each other? So I'm wondering, is it English learner homeless, like a combined kid? Is it so when I see suspension rate, is it a combo subgroups, or are they separate too?
That's a great question. The answer is absolutely yes.
Okay.
So especially in our suspension rates, it's possible a student could count 4 or 5 times and count against that school or the district in multiple groups for that same kiddo that was suspension. And suspension rate, we really want to look at overall instead of some of our subgroups, because I think the example we had, the initial dashboard, we had a red, and the red was for American Indian students. And when we delved into the data, we had 1 student suspended. But the year before, it was 0. So it was 100% increase, and it was automatically in the red. Well, that student is no longer with us, wasn't suspended. It went all the way up to the blue the following year. So I think we've seen, in some of this, because this is new, And 30 students equal a subgroup, except for at the district level, the foster group homeless is 15. But 30 students is a subgroup, and when it's just hitting 30, there's a lot of variability that is fluctuating some of these colors, or, that we're getting. So we don't want to jump to conclusions and go overboard. We're really looking at the suspension rate, because one or two changes has really fluctuated a subgroup or a school site.
Right. And second question, simple, the second question is this, is that in terms of the suspension rate, would you have the data that has kids that are permitted and kids that are not permitted? One of the things I noticed that the list that you had, all the schools that came out, are from the same area, North and Central. And so it seems to me those areas tend to have more higher permitted kids. And I wonder if that affects the data as well. I was just wondering if we had that data. I'm kind of curious to see.
I can get the exact data from you. When we have done this review before, we actually find the opposite.
Okay.
We have a lot of permit pulling power. 3 Ps in a row. And so that in general, when we have found that to be, it has not been our permit students that have caused our increase in suspension rates. But I can get that data.
Well, thank you. It was all good news there. It really was. And in fact, go online. It's kind of fun to push the buttons and see what's going on. And even I figured it out pretty quickly, so I'm sure everyone else can as well. We have hit that moment in our meeting where we call it oral communications. The Board of Education welcomes input from the public in order to discuss district business in an orderly manner for the privacy and safety of the speakers and to help staff respond more directly. The board policies require that public presentations to the board comply with certain procedures, including speakers to non-agenda items may address only items that are within the subject matter and jurisdiction of the board. Time allocated for such presentations is limited to 3 minutes. Total time allotted for public input on non-agenda items is limited to 30 minutes. A speaker may not relinquish his or her time to another. When addressing the board, speakers are requested to state their name, address the president from the podium, and adhere to applicable time limits. Complaints against employees or students will normally be heard in closed session, and the district complaint procedure should be followed before discussion with the board. The board may remove disruptive individuals in order the room cleared if necessary. Any person who willfully disturbs any public school meeting is guilty of a misdemeanor. Is this another one?
Yeah.
Good, okay. We'll just get them all in here in some sort of order. Okay, first person up will be Rebecca Fu from the Schweitzer Center.
We don't have more than 10, do we?
Good evening. I'm Dr. Rebecca Fu, the Executive Director of Schweitzer Learning Center, which is a special education school in Torrance for over 50 years. And about 20 years ago, we started acknowledging women in the community that made a difference. So we've had some wonderful women like Dee Hardison and Katie Geisert and Heidi Ashcraft, and we've had many unsung heroes who never got attention. And we asked people in the community to nominate some people that they think are deserving. And this year, the selection committee had several nominations, all for the same person. One nominator spent a lot of time emphasizing this person being on many commissions in the city of Torrance, her help with the deputy district attorney's office and the state level. Another nominator really emphasized her volunteering in our Torrance elementary and middle school and in high schools, in starting competitive math classes and robotics classes. And we all know that Mrs. Betty Chim Liu is sitting up here on our school board, and we would like to ask her if she'd like to be one of Schweitzer Learning Center's South Bay Women of the Year.
There we go. Probably.
That's a yes.
That's good.
I think that's a yes.
Hey, Tammy, maybe a picture's in order? She's running around with her camera.
Back there somewhere?
Is Tammy there? Well, good. We're going to have you and Rebecca, there's Tammy, take a picture right here. And then you have to keep the flowers, I mean, the balloons behind your chair for the balance of the meeting.
Nice. Yeah, probably behind you, yeah. There you go. Oops.
There we go.
And thank you for the time.
When is your Schweitzer Women of the Year?
It's on Ted's birthday, March 29th, at the Doubletree Hotel. I hope you all will come.
Ted will be there, I guarantee you. You okay?
Careful.
Yeah, that's extra stuff here in case you ever want. Thank you.
And thank you very much.
Yeah, we got to come right behind you. There we go, there you go, good. Good, okay. That was fun.
That was nice.
Okay, yes,
Nice, yeah.
Very nice.
that's good, we surprised you.
Good start.
Next up, James Henry, and behind, that'll be the next one up, Mr. Henry.
My name is James Henry. I'm a North Torrance High School graduate of 49 years and a longtime homeowner in the North Torrance neighborhood. I was asked to read this letter dated December 18, 2018 to you from a Ruth Lee in North Torrance. Board members of Torrance School District, I am disappointed that you are considering to sell the property at Hamilton Adult School for commercial or high-density housing. South Bay area does not have enough open space for parks or schools, and we should not be given away just to develop commercial or strip malls. I am a senior citizen who has lived in North Torrance for 52 years and have seen the closure of Prairie Elementary School and Evergreen Elementary School next to 405 Freeway on Crenshaw. I know that it was closed to the freeway, however, Los Angeles have built schools. I'm trying to find out what I mean. Next to freeways because they have no choice due to unavailable open area for schools. I enjoyed Hamilton Adult School when I retired to take up classes in computer skills, cooking, language, and line dancing. I met students who were there who were unable to attend El Camino College. Please keep Hamilton Adult School property for North Torrance folks. Signed, Ruth Lee.
Thank you very much. Mary Beth Borowski.
Hi, good evening. Happy New Year. I am looking forward to working with the new board this year. I was going to come to support TTA with the negotiations proposal, but I had just an incident in my room today, so I thought, you know what, I'll bring it up here. So we came back after the long weekend, and we were in our PLC meeting. The internet was working fine. I get back to my room, and bam, internet's out in my wing only. My whole lesson is based on the internet. It's frustrating. So I go to call IT, but when I pick up the phone doesn't work. So I know that the district, I know that you are aware that we have this problem, but it is dangerous when we don't have classroom phones because the internet's down, and the office can't contact us, we can't contact other classrooms. And so I'm asking for solutions to that problem, and I want you to be aware of it because I do think it's a safety issue, and it's, that's how we communicate in our classrooms. And then since I'm on, and I do want to give a shout out to IT. They were very helpful. I called on my cell phone. They updated me throughout the day. Brian, the tech, said that there's a backup battery, but it only lasts like 10, 15 minutes. So that's why we don't have the phones. And so since I was on the topic of technology, I wanted to bring attention also. Science, a lot of their curriculum is online, and social studies, we're adopting new textbooks, and a lot of the supplemental material, they are online, and we need more access to technology. So I have an old Chromebook cart in my room, but we share it a lot, and it's really difficult because so much that we do is online. I use Google Classroom all the time to have the kids type essays, and if you've ever used that, it's great because you can see as they're typing, you can go to everybody's page and see what they're doing at live access. So that's a great tool. And when we have substitutes, it's nice if the curriculum's online, that the substitutes can access the Chromebooks right in the room. We don't have to be shuttling them back and forth, plus there's wear and tear when that happens. So I'm just asking, schools really would appreciate the Chromebook cart, so when you're doing budget. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up will be DHRITI. Doriti? And last name starts with a V, because I'm going to blow that one. And then next up is Sandy Yosef?
Yeah. I apologize. We are together. I didn't understand the.
That's okay. That's good. That's perfect.
Okay.
Just come on up here together.
Thank you. TUSD Board, President Lee, today I've come here as a West High School sophomore to address the issues regarding teachers not feeling that they're getting enough pay. It has impacted us students in a significant way, and we do support that our teachers should be getting more pay, and yet we're stuck in a situation where both sides are being negatively impacted. Because right now, as students, many of us can't go to our teachers during lunch for help. Some of them aren't responding to emails. We have teachers who are sometimes turning down recommendation letters for prestigious colleges and programs. Our clubs are being halted, and this is affecting our high school experience, and in the end may affect our future. We have this situation where we have teachers who are essentially not feeling at their best when they're teaching, and that hurts us as students because when our teachers don't feel at their best, we don't want to learn as much either. And for these reasons, we hope that you're able to negotiate with the teachers of all of Torrance and help make the situation better for us at our school.
We can't come here without presenting a realistic solution that may help in this budget dilemma. With a consultation from Ms. Jennifer Ross, a phenomenal LAUSD teacher from Taper Elementary School, we were able to come up with an idea that may help fit the teacher pay raise into our budget. We could consult and persuade tax officials of the government to consider redistributing 0.5% of tax on commonly used profits to help fund teacher pay raise. An example of this can be on gas. If we were able to put 0.5% of the tax that could directly go to teachers, then if the math is correct, we would be able to raise $243,606 a year for teachers in TUSD. And being that there are around 300 teachers, each teacher would receive about $812. If the same thing was done with a 5% tax, then tax on gas, then each teacher would be able to receive approximately $8,120 a year added for their salary. A learning environment and with underappreciated teachers and disadvantaged students is not one we envision for us and our peers. Students and teachers are the foundation of any school or educational hierarchy. The role that our teachers play in our lives is quite remarkable and certainly unforgettable. Outstanding teachers are not only the ones who offer academic support, but also help students discover themselves and grow as individuals. Our teachers' availability and enormous help that they offer us during after-school hours are things that we should not take for granted. Us students who succeed off of these assets, we are obliged to do everything in our power to ensure the comfort and appreciation for these conscientious, hardworking teachers while securing our academic privileges, which in this particular case would be attempted by presenting this to you. This project is very significant to us because it offers respect and gratitude to the teachers we admire and has the potential to make a remarkable difference in our school community. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Next up, Julie Schenkel, Deb DeBush, and Kathy Kelly.
Good evening, members of the board. Deb is playing Vanna White there for us. In December, TTA's negotiations team met with the leadership of CSEA 845, CSEA 19, and SEIU Local 99 to discuss our mutual interests. One topic surfaced as exceptionally important to all of us because it impacts all of us, and that is reconstituting a district calendar committee that builds the TUSD calendar with the voices of all the stakeholder groups as part of that process. Tonight, we're bringing forward a letter that has been signed by the presidents of all 4 of our local TUSD unions. We believe that including our stakeholders in these conversations creates a more interest-based environment for all of us, and we hope that we can do that in future years.
Thank you very much. And in fact, we have Julie next and Deb the last speaker. So
I'm going to cede my time on the second one.
Oh, okay, so then I got Deb. And Deb is coming up. Good, that's my last order. Okay, good.
Here we go. Good evening, President Lee, School Board, Cabinet, and Student Representative. Deb DeBush, TTA President, 1619 Cravens. I would like to take this opportunity to say thank you to all the Torrance educators and support staff who give their time, talent, and dedication to the students they teach and support each and every day. The California Common Core standards demand we as educators go beyond surface-level recall and rote memory. The endless effort of TUSD educators to create and deliver lessons which inspire creativity and critical thinking skills is amazing. These professionals go far beyond the barriers of the classroom to promote lifelong learning and develop young people of character. I want to say a special thank you to all the Torrance educators and support staff who have been wearing red for ed to show support of public education and students throughout California and the nation. We have to partner with the general public to stand together and let our legislators know that more than ever, increased funding is needed to educate every student in California. Lastly, I want to thank all of the Torrance educators and support staff who took time away from their families to be here tonight to stand with the TTA negotiations team as we start the 2018-19 negotiations process with our Sunshine Proposal. Tonight, I thank you.
Okay, seeing anyone else under orals? Okay, come on up. We felt the card afterwards. Come on up.
All right, good evening, President Lee and rest of the school board. My name is Liam Fitzpatrick, and this is my friend Matt Lee. We are seniors at West High School, and we're here to give you a presentation about drug abuse in teens. So, drug abuse in high school students is becoming a big epidemic, and we're here to hopefully spread awareness and offer some positive solutions to the problem. But in order to tell you about our solutions, we need to first start off by telling you about the problem and why teens in high school abuse drugs.
So, research and surveys by the Food and Drug Administration have shown that high school students use drugs for various reasons, including the following. They want to forget their troubles and relax. They want to ease their pain, or they want to belong to a specific group, or they do it because of curiosity or peer pressure. But we believe the biggest cause of continued drug use, especially vaping in this day and age, is simple misinformation. A study shows that 66% of teen e-cigarette users don't know that there's actually nicotine in the e-cigarettes, and that's a real big problem. And obviously there are many problems with doing drugs, especially at such a young age. The use of drugs leads to addiction from an early age. This results in bad habits and progression into adulthood. And it causes teens to develop bad habits like laziness, low motivation, and lack of drive to achieve goals. And this also brings down the quality of their life, it lowers their grades, and it makes them more paranoid, and it often causes tensions at home. And specifically at West High School, you can just be in class and you can overhear even like freshmen talking about vaping or their vape pens, and it paints this picture of the school and what it's doing to even younger people, such as freshmen in 9th grade. And the way in which students are using drugs is currently dealt with is often very severe and unforgiving. If a student is caught for the first time using drugs, they may experience any of the following from suspension as presented earlier. They can even be arrested sometimes, and specifically at West High, we have a punishment for vaping includes they're like closing down the bathrooms, which doesn't really make sense because it's more punishing the people who are not vaping rather than those who are vaping. So as a result, like 2 or 3 of our bathrooms on campus are actually closed as a result of the people who vape, because you can just like smell it in the air. And if there are severe punishments for doing drugs, then why are teens still doing it? And I feel like my colleague Liam has some solutions to offer.
So Matt and I believe that simply shoving a punishment in a teen's face is not the best solution. If anything, it just makes their life worse and probably pushes them to use drugs more to deal with that stress and that punishment that they've received thus forth. So instead, our solution is to promote the benefits of staying drug-free and setting up relief programs to those students already encapsulated into drugs, so helping them to get out of drug habits, so like clubs and after-school activities. And this, and these students have chosen to abuse drugs should be treated as the same as students who fail a class or have or are close to it. It's not some, criminal that's done some felony. And because of the stigma around drug abusers at high school, you get all this negative, press for these students, and it's all negative. So teaching the students how to stay away from drugs, the benefits of staying away from drugs, and how to get out of using drugs if you ever find yourself in that situation is a good solution that we think would work. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. I think it's admirable that you came out here to speak on this issue and everything that went with it. In fact, there's going to be a program that Dr. Crumpy is going to roll out, I think, to do with mental health and other issues that are coming up pretty quick. Have you talked to your principal about any of this?
No, we have not yet.
Probably a good place to start. Okay. Tell her you came to the board meeting and we asked you guys to talk to her, and I'm pretty sure you can get an appointment, probably during the class you don't want to go to, so that's good. And go from there and, keep the board up to date on your progress. Thank you very much. And fill out the yellow card because she gets really mean.
Thank you.
There you go. Thank you. Okay, discussion action items. Item Instruction to the public, speakers wishing to address the board on agenda topics are permitted 3 minutes per topic. Total time granted to public input shall be limited to 30 minutes per topic. The board policies require that a public presentation to the board comply with certain procedures, including items 2 through 4 listed in oral communications. Item 10.2, approve history social science textbook adoptions for 2019. Dr. Crumpy. Motion and a second to get it on the agenda.
Move to approve.
Good. Okay, we got a motion and a second.
Okay, thank you. In Torrance, we typically utilize an entire 12-month process to thoroughly review and select our core content, with teachers from every school working diligently to decide what materials are the best for our students. I want to turn over the microphone to Mr. Egan as he introduces our teachers who have been waiting all night for this presentation, so we thank them. But even more importantly, the work that they've put into and how seriously they have taken this process is not only commendable, it's extraordinary. And they've done a very, very impressive job and put in a tremendous amount of time ensuring that they're choosing and selecting the right materials. So we thank them for that.
Good evening. Thank you, Dr. Crumpy. We'll just get right to it here. So it's been my pleasure to work alongside not only the teachers involved in this committee, but with the resource teachers, some of which are here tonight, Jackie Ryan and Christy Colleen, as well as some site administrators, Portia Riviera and Michelle Fournier, who helped us keep this process on track. In addition, we had approximately 60 teachers make up the various committees, 3 different levels, elementary, middle, and high school. And we have some folks here tonight representing each of those committees who will be speaking with you shortly. Our process began in the spring of 2018 and concluded just this past December. So, better part of a year with some visits from publishers over the summertime as well. As you see here on this slide, the process for all 3 levels began by identifying our needs, and we utilized these particular items on this list as sort of grounding forces throughout the process. In the second bullet there, 2 things in particular, inquiry and citizenship, which are part of the new California framework for history, social science. Those emerged as key items for focus for all of our teams at all 3 levels throughout their evaluation. So at this time, I'd like to invite the representatives from the various levels to come forward, beginning with our elementary representatives. So representing the elementary review team, we have Deborah Tabush from Riviera and Sherry Nelson from Carr.
Good evening. So as we go through, thanks. The leadership team consisted of 1 elementary teacher and 2 district facilitators. Each site had 1 or 2 representatives throughout the process, which included teachers from TK through grade 5. As Katie was saying, this task spanned from January 2018 until presenting to you here tonight. As you can see, we met various times throughout the summer and school year. We listened to publishers, evaluated the curriculum choices, and had a lot of committee and site discussions along the way. This process was fully vetted by committee members, teachers at the elementary sites, and parents.
There were representatives from TK through 5 at the all levels of the grade levels involved in the process. We had at least 2 representatives from each school site, and we gave the sites different surveys for them to respond to, for the teachers to respond to, so that they had the opportunity to provide input. We got parent input and feedback through surveys also, and we even had a representative from LACO come and speak with us on the inquiry and citizenship process of the framework, and so that we could, because it is new to the program this year, and we want to make sure that we are, that we're implementing the framework properly. So we had Michelle Herzog come in and speak to us. And our recommendation for TK is teacher-created materials. And the reason it's different than K through 5 because that's the only publisher that provides a TK representative or TK version, thank you. And K5 is Pearson.
Thank you. And now, representing the middle school team, I'd like to invite up Rick Ducker, teacher at Jefferson Middle School, and Lindsay Wildridge from Madrona Middle School.
Good evening. So our process and procedure for middle school was quite similar to that of elementary school. We had the same basic timeline. For the middle school, each site sent 2 representatives, and we wanted to make sure we had an approximately equal distribution between grades 6 through 8 so that all points of view were represented. We developed the criteria that we use to evaluate all the materials based on assessed student needs and student strengths. And then we evaluated all of the programs through that lens of student needs and student strengths, focusing mostly on the areas of inquiry, alignment with the framework, differentiated instruction, and critical thinking.
Thank you. So overall, what you'll see here is this is just to highlight some of the other areas that we tended to focus on over the course that we set goals that we set for ourselves at the beginning. It's just a reiteration of some of the stuff that we spoke about earlier. A couple things that we really wanted to highlight about this process. One of the first things was the level of engagement of all the teachers that were present. Teachers were really all in throughout the process. There was a lot of very meaningful conversation that took place at each one of the meetings for the teachers to discuss the different publishers and to really discuss to find the best solution for all levels. The other is based on the surveys that were previously mentioned, all the things that were discussed at the committee meetings were allowed to go back to all of the sites, and we sought to get that engagement from the teachers who were not present there. And we really actively spent a lot of time trying to hear what those teachers had to say so that it could be discussed with the remainder of the committee. And overall, our recommendation is TCI's History Alive.
Thank you. And now for our last pair of representatives from our high school team, I'd like to invite up Brooke Gillen and Matt Glazer.
Hi, thank you. Just want to say ditto from everything you already heard. Just give you a heads up on the process. We met over the summer and created basically a rubric or a document for how we were going to go through the textbooks. And then we gave that out to the other teachers so they could take a look at it, basically make any comments, get familiar with it. We met with the textbook companies. They gave their presentation. And we took copious amount of notes, and then we went back to our individual subject areas and really worked together going through the textbooks. We created a ranking system, 1, 2, and 3, and basically took that data back to our meeting, our textbook committee, and basically went over our data and selected our textbooks. Okay, this one here pretty much reiterates what I said, but I do want to put it out there that we had a lot of time, a lot of opportunity to work together with the teachers. It was really a teacher-led process, and I want to thank the administrators for that. They set us up with subs. They helped give us the dates, but they gave us a lot of the power. And Brooke's going to talk a little more.
Good evening. Since I'm at the end, it's a lot of the same, but there was a lot of teacher input. I think some of the differences to highlight between secondary and maybe elementary and middle school, they talked a lot about teacher surveys and teacher input. We did not do individual teacher surveys. Everything was done in our PLC content teams. So like was mentioned, we were given subs, and we were allowed to come together, so world history, U.S. history, government and economics, and because we collaborate so frequently in those teams, we thought it was the best way to get teacher input, so we decided as a team in that ranking system, then went back as a leadership team, talked in subject groups again, had some good and meaningful conversations, and then were able to come up with our recommendations. And also a little bit different from elementary and middle school. We have, if you look up there, a couple of different publisher choices. World history and U.S. history as subject teams both chose Pearson. Government and economics is asking for Teacher Curriculum Institute, or TCI. We kind of discussed as a group, and it just kind of felt that government and economics, while social studies is a little bit different than maybe U.S. history or world history in its application and some of its inquiry-based opportunities, citizenship opportunities, and the TCI was a better fit. So I think that's the one big difference in highlighting them.
I have a question. In the economics high school textbook, is there any section on financial literacy or anything along those lines?
There is a section that deals with it. There's in the Teacher Curriculum Institute, there is a chapter that deals with retirement, that deals with investment opportunities, and is kind of a broader picture. And then I think at the school sites, teachers individually talk about various elements of like budget processes and other things. That's also
Compound interest, how to balance checking account.
Absolutely.
How to write a check, which I had to teach my kids
So-
how to do.
Yes.
I failed as a parent.
That, again, is something that was offered in the TCI supplementals. So writing a check was not in the textbook itself, but compound interest definitely is. They do talk about retirement accounts.
What a credit card can do to you. Good.
Yes,
okay,
and a lot of that is added on, yes.
They included Venmo and Zelle, all that stuff too, right?
Let's hope, yeah, that would be awesome. Let's hope that, yeah, that becomes part of the discussion.
Good. Mr. Egan, I'd love to see that section of the textbook. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Just a couple more things to emphasize in this process. As was mentioned earlier in the day today, parents were involved in this process. We were quite pleased with the turnout at the opportunities that we did offer and make the curriculum or the materials available for them to review. Just of note, some of them reviewed all levels of materials, even though they came maybe representing just an elementary student. They were interested in seeing the materials throughout. Some stayed as long as 3 hours and gave us some great feedback that really was informative to our teachers prior to them making their decision as well. So just to reiterate, the proposal here to you as the board tonight is from the teachers. These are as presented in their various presentations tonight. And just the last thing to note that one of the reasons why we're bringing it to you at this point in the year is again, as the interest of the teachers is to make sure that they have plenty of time to receive their materials, which we're projecting that if we can gain approval in the next moments here tonight, then we can move forward and get the purchase orders going and potential delivery of teacher materials to them by May, allowing them some time in their PLCs this school year to start unpacking them and then gain opportunities for release time from class as well as throughout the summer to really get prepared and be ready for students to deliver this in the fall. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I have one card on this for a Catherine Mondesett. I ruined that, sorry.
Hi, so my name is Catherine Modisett, and I'm the parent of an 8th grader at Richardson, but in a former life, I was a history major, and I was one of the parents that came and reviewed the texts. And I would have reviewed the younger grades text, except I knew Mr. Egan wanted to go to lunch, and I was the one that was there for 3 hours. I was pleased to see that the problematic texts from Houghton Mifflin were not approved, so thank you very much, teachers. I think you did a great job there. But I felt some concerns when I saw that you were proposing the adoption of the Pearson text for grades 10 and 11. I feel that by 10th grade, textbooks should use quotes from primary sources rather than having a section of text prefacing a viewpoint with the words, "some people say," which I found in the Pearson textbooks. I really object to that in a textbook that claims to be dispensing facts. I feel like they should instead be citing a political party or a platform, rather than "some people say," which is a really nifty way of sneaking a political viewpoint into a book without citing an actual author. So I would recommend that the board take a second look at those textbooks and see if they find them problematic before approving them. And while I found on the whole the TCI textbooks to be better researched without the vague "some people say" phrase, I have some concerns about adopting the TCI text for grade 12, as is currently recommended for government. the textbook is about half the size of the other textbooks. And this is because it doesn't have any state government materials in it, as some of the other textbooks do. I think Mr. Egan and some of the other teachers told me that those were going to be online, that the way they do the textbooks is that they give the government, and then each state has online materials. Well, you've already heard tonight one teacher talking about the difficulties with the internet in her classroom. And I think that it creates some difficulties for lower income students to require them to have access to a computer in order to complete their homework. If you have multiple screens, Wi-Fi, unlimited minutes of data in your house, please take a moment and realize that not every child in Torrance Unified has those same luxuries. Some may not even have homes. And by not supplying those students with text, you've created additional homework and having them walk to libraries, wait for computers, wait for printers, etc. The TCI text on the federal government was superior to the other books, but I don't have any idea about the state section materials because I was not able to review those. And until I think they come out with a printed text, I would not feel right about endorsing it because of the added burden online books place upon those students who are already burdened enough. Thank you.
She brings up a good question on as we transition more and more to online textbooks, online homework, those kinds of things. Is that an issue that some people don't have access to a computer now and don't have access to those materials online? And if they don't, what do we do? Print it out?
So that was definitely something that was alive in the conversation with teachers throughout the process as well. Certainly a concern about similar to what Ms. Borowski mentioned earlier in the evening, not necessarily so much about the reliance on the Wi-Fi, but certainly about the availability of the technology in the classroom. We've brought that back to our Ed Services conversation throughout the process as well. So we've been consulting one another about the next round of our technology for our district and how it needs to meet these needs as best as possible.
Okay, and that deals with the classroom part of it, and yes, I think the bonds will take care of it because we've got $5 million issues every 5 years. 2020 is the next issue of bonds for technology refresh, so we probably not too early to start talking about that. But the other thing is, I'm a kid, junior, senior. I don't have access to the internet at home. I don't have a computer that works. Maybe I've got one that's 20 years old that grinds out and I have to dial up internet or something. How does that kid?
So and Gil can pipe in here and use the right technology terms, but this has always been a concern and always been a discussion point to ensure that all students have access to everything that they need to be able to do the work that we give them. The single access platform that we use is downloadable. And so I'm sure I'm not using exactly the right terms, but they can access these materials without the Wi-Fi. So they can actually, even on their cell phone, or
we can print out a hard copy.
Well, and we can. But kids don't always like to do that, but absolutely we can print out a hard copy if we can, or I mean, if needed.
Or it could go on this kind of a device or whatever.
And true, but we've tested it. We've ensured that they can have things at school while they have their Wi-Fi, with our ETUSD account that they all have, that they can then go someplace else and still have access to those resources offline. But schools are also very, very aware and have additional extended times in library for before school and after school. If kids, if there's a concern or limited resources, and we've loaned a few devices as well.
And I know all the Torrance libraries all have high-speed internet connection.
Correct.
And computers that they're allowed to use for free with merely having a library
They do.
card.
So we've worked really closely with our school sites and ensured that the school sites are working with students to ensure that that's not a limitation of the work that we're doing.
Good, thank you. Mrs. Liu.
Thank you for the presentation from all the teachers and parent also. I was wondering, to address Ms. Modisit's orals, is there a reason why the government textbook, the TCI textbook, doesn't have the state government section in it, why it has to be online? Is it updated all the time, or what is the reason why they don't have printed text for the state government?
Primarily, TCI was an online-based system. As a supplemental resource, they've now expanded into being a comprehensive product that can be available for the whole comprehensive need for the subject matter. So I think to some degree they're in development. However, part of these issues that have been communicated tonight have also been communicated throughout the process, and we've been in contact with the representatives from TCI as well and made them aware. First and foremost, what came out in the process was the teachers' concern about their resources only being online and their desire for print resources, and the company's committed to meeting that need and any others that we expressed to them about the difference between some of the print and online resources to make sure that we do have the access that best fits our community's needs.
Do you know, it sounds like they're just kind of new and going to print. Do we know if they're planning to have textbooks that have both federal and state government in the near future, or do we not know anything about that?
I'd have to get you some more information on that. Part of what we'll be working with them to ensure that we get will come when we start negotiating what our terms for our purchase will be, which would be premature to do that before your authorization tonight.
I see, okay. And how about in addressing the concern that in the Pearson books, there's no citation, I suppose? That is there a lot of, like, some people say this and that in regards to history? As I believe the Pearson books would be world history in grade 10 and grade 11.
And that wasn't a concern that the teachers brought up throughout the process as they were reviewing.
Of the 71, was it secondary parents that participated? That's a lot. Was there, and you said there's consensus. I'm very happy to see that there are parents' participation and that there are a lot of teachers from different sections and different subjects coming to help out. I know this is, gosh, I'm not going to say it's hours. It's like really probably days and weeks that people spend on it. But I suppose the secondary parents, was there consensus among the teachers or consensus among teachers and parents in choosing which textbooks?
The consensus is among the teachers. The parents, a lot of their input did align with the decision that the teachers made. However, not all of it did. And so that's part of the informative process for us, is to then evaluate what are those needs that are being represented that maybe don't align with our decisions, so that we can make sure that we're reacting to those with what we do in our trainings, as well as to how the curriculum and materials impact the classroom, so that those parent concerns are addressed as best we possibly can.
I see.
And I think maybe important to remember is, 20 years ago, we were very reliant on the textbook and the written text. And the advantages of being able to go to a primary source, and teachers have been, in fact, it was some of the initial Common Core training that we did with the 4 Ps and the 3 Ds has been working around an essential question. I know I'm throwing out terms, sorry. But the being able for teachers to pull in and use secondary sources to complement, supplement, support, or be more important than the primary text. That the standards are what we teach, and then they use those resources to aid in that instruction. So the textbook is not, they're not as reliant on that as a single source as they used to, because they have so many other alternative resources that they can use.
Yeah, I think I generally agree. I like us going into more of an online kind of text, books because there's so many things that changes and it makes a lot more sense with this day and age. I am just a little concerned as to what kind of contents there are. In terms of the online material for state government, were the teachers able to, teachers and parents and all that participated, able to look at what materials there were online from the TCI text?
Absolutely, the teachers were. We were certainly
they went over them
limited
too.
with time and other issues with, when parents were present, so I don't know. We have a parent who spoke tonight who obviously wasn't able to access to the same degree that teachers did, dealing with the amount of time that we had. Obviously, teachers had more time available to do that and look deeply at it, which they did.
Maybe you can, for the yellow card, there's probably contact information. Maybe you can send the parent, I don't know, a link or something to show what materials they have online in terms of state government for the TCI textbook.
Sure, yes, absolutely.
Thank you. And last, I just want to say, quite many years ago, there was a state bill pushing for financial literacy. And I myself believe that is a very important subject, that it's amazing how many kids graduate from high school and not know about compound interest and credit cards, for example. I mean, there's been many reports on things of that sort. So I just want to make sure, I want to thank you for choosing the econ book that has financial literacy in it, but please make sure that it's also going to be taught to our students, not just, it's there, take a look at it, chapter 10. No, just talk a little bit more about it, so make sure all of our students understand. So thank you very much for all the time, and to all the teachers and you guys for choosing the textbooks for our schools.
Mr. Gerson.
Going back to the first bullet point of the presentation, would you explain a little further about the TUSD signature practices for history, social studies?
Is this a slide?
Yes.
No, okay. The signature practices for history, social studies are related to the training that all the secondary history teachers receive, which aligned with the Common Core standard transition that we had in our district. That Dr. Cumpry actually referred to it by using the letters of the 4 Ps and aligning those practices that help teachers understand how to utilize things such as inquiry as driving forces in their instruction.
What are the 4 Ps?
Ooh.
Perspective, process, product, and thank you, purpose. Yeah, been a little while. Am I getting hazed tonight?
No. No, I think it's important because those signature practices apply directly to the parents' concerns. And as the teachers are using those 4 Ps, when we say, some would say, it's the perfect opportunity, I know, for many of our teachers to be very critical and show their critical thinking process in assessing how a textbook publisher works and giving a different perspective. So thank you very much.
Mr. Hahn.
Again, I just want to agree with all the people here that all of you guys did a wonderful job. I know picking a textbook is not an easy task, and so we really do appreciate your input in actually choosing a textbook itself. A couple of things. Obviously, even though we have secondary sources, we are endorsing a textbook. We can't say, people always have access to secondary sources, but we're here to approve a textbook for TUSD. So that's why we have to take this very seriously. We just can't say, well, there's an online resource that they want to validate. That's true. But the reality is that we have to validate one textbook here. And that's our prerogative here. And that's why I think that's an important question when some people say something. And again, the problem with history is I was also a history person, and so I majored in English and history. And obviously history is interpretive. And so a lot of times people are going to add their own perspective into history, and something that we cannot deny. But the question I want to ask for all the evaluators is that obviously many of them, I'm not sure if are aware of the FAIR Act when it came to the textbooks itself. And I was kind of curious to see the evaluators' concern regarding the FAIR Act and the way that these history books address that issue. I'm curious to hear Was it concern? Was there, because obviously that is a big portion of the new textbooks today. And I'm kind of curious to see what evaluation there were.
Can you elaborate a little more on your question? Because, I mean, as far as the process for our teachers,
It'd be surprising to me that these teachers who have been using historical old textbooks would not have been surprised by these new admissions into these history textbooks. It'd be surprising to me. It'd be very surprising to me that it would not have caught their eye, where they would say, oh, I'm surprised they put this in here. Oh, I can't believe they addressed this issue. Those are the questions I'm wondering, because the FAIR Act made a big difference. It's a big, big push. And so because of that, obviously it has to be fair, it has to be accurate, it has to be inclusive, and it has to be respectful, right? That's the FAIR Act, right? Those four things. And therefore, when you're choosing a textbook, the state of California chose 6 out of the 8 publishers, right? That's what you obviously chose. One, the state of California suggested or are okay with, that meet that law. I'm just curious from the evaluators, it'd be surprising to me that that issue was not raised up. Being a history guy myself, I think that it would be very surprising to me, especially how I grew up and what I've learned. And so I'm wondering if were there any concerns regarding those issues, like ethnicities, minorities? Yes.
so we have, I guess, some teachers who want to speak to this, and, so I'm going to let them. I would like to, just for the board's understanding, identify that we utilized and were guided by the LA County Office of Education with our evaluation tools. We adhered to those strictly throughout the process, which guided us to look closely at standards as they currently lie, as well as the framework and those shifts. So those were the key points that drove the process.
Hello. Good evening. So I all of a sudden have so many butterflies in my tummy right now, and I've spoken to so many of you before, and now it's just like, oh my gosh, what am I doing up here? So I'm representing the elementary committee that met and talked, and you going by Nelson? Yes, Miss Nelson mentioned that Nancy came and spoke with us from the LA County, right? And she's like a guru of everything history. And she shared with us the FAIR Act and what it contained. I don't remember all of it up here. I don't have my notes. And she talked about the importance of it and how it will affect, and especially like as you get into the secondary. But I know, especially for my grade level group, 4th grade, as we were looking at the different materials, we were looking at a couple different things. One, how that FAIR Act came in, and 2, how different perspectives were brought to light. So we made sure that when we looked at the missions, are we only hearing it from the perspective of the Father Sarah people and what they were bringing as Spanish missionaries, or were we learning about it from the perspective of the Indians and how it was affected? There is, within the citizenship part, which Mr. Egan talked about and some other people talked about, it's brought in some people from California. Harvey Milk is one of them, and I think a story and some information about him is brought up in a 2nd grade textbook, and it is brought forward in such a way that, well, people may not agree with it, and I don't know, we might have to talk about how to discuss this with parents and our community members at some point, but it is brought up in such a way that it is an introduction to kids at that age, and it is not something that I believe that we need to shy away from. It is something that is part of the FAIR Act, it's part of our society, and we need to start talking about it so students have that knowledge and that foundation in elementary school, so when it gets to these people, they can build on it and really bring it together. Does that help answer?
It does, it helps, yes.
Thank you. That's good. I'm learning.
Hi, so I'll speak from a middle school perspective. So I teach both 7th and 8th grades, so for content-wise, we're talking medieval world history and early U.S. history. And something that was definitely a part of all of the conversations I think that took place, whether it was 6, 7, or 8, was really examining a text that would provide a broad level of perspectives as well as a deep level of perspectives to allow the students to not only understand them, but also to engage with them. So while each text itself is not going to tick all of the boxes, we were trying to find the one that would, to your point, do that the most respectfully, one that would not tell the students what to think, but then would also tie into that citizenship component where it would allow the teacher to kind of take ownership of that material and then develop lessons that would further engage the students, allow for those conversations, have those discussions. So I don't want to get too much into the parents' point about high school level, but I will say that was definitely a huge part of the conversation we were having at the middle school level.
And speaking for high school, I almost was going to say the exact same thing. We did the same thing. It was a big part of the discussion, obviously, with multiple perspectives, especially in government. It was part of the evaluation form that we filled out for every single textbook, whether it was world history, U.S. history, government, or economics, as part of that process. So it's definitely something that we looked at, and we also chose the textbook that we thought would present multiple perspectives, give teachers opportunities to develop lessons, and give students opportunities to look at various viewpoints.
Well, thank you. Mrs. Reagans.
I just wanted to thank Katie for bringing up 20 years ago when I did many different textbook committees way back when, and all there was that big, huge, hard copy textbook. And at that point, the parents were saying, what, all you can do is this giant book that my kid has to carry around? We need some online components here. So it's refreshing to actually see it having gone the other direction, and I'm sure there's some happy medium in between, which we're all trying to hit, to have some materials to have in hand, but also to be able to utilize the resources online that are so vast and informative to our students. So I appreciate the work, the extreme amount of work, having gone through it, that you folks have gone through, and I appreciate the opinions that you have offered and brought forward, and I feel comfortable, actually, with the adoption with the folks that you have access. So thank you for doing that.
Yeah, Mrs. Reagan's brought up a good point. I remember sending my kids to school looking like Sherpas
Yeah,
going
those
up to
giant
Alaska,
backpacks
to
and stuff,
Mount Everest. So maybe, yeah.
Still kind of do right now.
I didn't in my high school career, but that's okay. So, okay, good. So we've got a motion, we got a second, we've talked about it. I'll probably say all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
I oppose.
Okay, 4-1. Good, okay. Thank you very much. We're on to the next item.
Thank you.
Approval of board policies and board bylaws updates, October 2018 revisions. I need a motion and a second.
Don, can I interrupt? It's been more than 2 hours. Can we take 5?
Actually, let's just, we're almost done, actually.
We're almost
Oh, are we?
done.
It's pressed.
Oh, unless you really, you got it, okay, good.
It's fine.
Yeah, we usually just keep going. I mean, if you need to stop
Good.
them. So I wanted to make a motion to approve the board policies and bylaws updates and revisions and waive a second reading.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Good. Appointment of Parent Advisory Committee as required by Education Code. Katie Crumpy, that's the list.
Yes, that's
Motion a
the
second.
list with the required
Groupings.
division of parent representatives.
Do I have a motion and a second?
Move to approve?
Second.
Second. He's got to go to the bathroom. He'll be fast. All those in favor?
See, it's not just you.
I'm sorry.
He's teasing him too.
I know. The consent agenda, we'll just make a motion to approve all of them, right? Yes?
Yes.
Anybody need to?
Jeremy will second that.
I second
Yeah,
that.
good. All those in favor?
Aye.
Good. No to orals. We have a short presentation from Mrs. Reagans on the Southern California Occupational Center?
We do, very short, actually. I did attend the meeting last week. 4 of the 8 members of the board are changing out, and only 3 of the new members were there. So the 4th member will have to be sworn in next month. There was no actually major business aside from the normal business of the center. They did talk about having school services look at their funding formulas in relation to some conflicts with the JPAs and us paying for our kids to attend SoCal Rock. So school services will be assessing that situation and hopefully doing an evaluation of the process. Yes.
Excuse me, Mr. Gerson.
Take your time.
The actual piece, and I support SoCal Rock, actually, I think it should have been done about 6 years ago, is that California School Services is going to do a performance audit of SoCal Rock, which will get at not only the financial questions we've had for many years, but it's going to get at the issue of classes, what they offer, whether or not those classes are really the classes kids want to take, find out which classes aren't going, set minimum numbers of students for a class to actually make. Some of those just operational pieces that probably should have been going on there for many years. Thank you.
So that will be ongoing. More to come in the future from that. It'll take a long while, probably at least 6 months before we'll have anything back from that.
I think about 3 to 4.
Yeah.
Mrs. Liu?
Actually, that's what I was going to ask, when that performance audit will be.
It hasn't even been actually
The
approved
board
by the
hasn't,
board.
yeah, the board hasn't approved it.
No, we just
What
talked
should
about
be
it.
on their agenda in February. An audit of that size, and I agree, there was some discussion, should take between 3 and 4 months.
About 3 or 4 months, okay. And in the meantime, I know, for example, quite a few, my son is one of the examples of people who are interested in taking some classes at SCROC for certain subjects that their high schools don't have. We're still participating in that?
Absolutely.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
And do we have an idea how many of our high school students utilize SCROC?
I can only tell you, it used to be, I think last semester, about 450.
The new semester just started, actually, so
Yes.
they didn't actually have a firm count at SoCal Rock,
Yes.
so.
But it's been around 450.
I had a kid use it.
Yeah.
Yeah, you too.
But in any case, a student who has interest or desire needs to go through their counselor.
And then the counselor will tell them what they need to do in order to take the classes,
Counselor,
just like a regular.
well, the counselor will
regular
sit down
class.
and see what kind of interest the student has. These are classes that are available.
Okay. I like, if possible, when SCROC has it, I like to see how many students they have from our Torrance district.
Yeah, they usually do give us a count, actually, once they.
Yeah,
have
it'll be
it.
broken out by district.
Yeah, they'll be great, if they can do something like that for us. Because 450 from last semester, that's significant. It shows a lot of, how our students might have the need to take classes there for classes that's not available in our traditional high schools. Great, so thank you.
Okay, we're to oral communication from the board. We'll start with Mr. Hahn.
No comment.
Mrs. Reagans.
I do have a couple of other things that, I'll be really fast, Mr.
You're so bad.
I just need to identify the classified employees that have reached anniversary increments and give them a little recognition for having done that. For 10 years of accredited service, we have Raphael, I think it's Pila, at the Griffith Adult Center. And for 15 years of service, we have Vince Grosso and Catherine Mitsui. Thank you for your service for our students and for being with us for that extreme amount of time. We appreciate you being with us. And I did want to say that in the consent calendar, there were some resolutions that I wanted to highlight. One was a resolution proclaiming January 30th as Fred Korematsu Day of Civil Liberties and the Constitution. So on January 30th, please actually look at your civil liberties and appreciate them and get a feel for where they've come from and who has helped us with that. February 2019 is African American History Month, so celebrate our African American folks and friends and the history that they brought to us in our country. And the resolution proclaiming February 4th to 8th is School Counseling Week. This is a really good time to look at your school counselors and the efforts that they're putting forth for your students and pat them on the back and say thank you for what they are doing for our kids. They would appreciate that from all of us to get a little bit of recognition. And that is it. Thank you, sir.
Good. Mrs. Liu.
First of all, I want to say Happy New Year. Just Happy New Year for everyone. We're off to a great start. I understand the high school's finals week is coming up, so I especially want to encourage all students, please, focus on your studies in case there are parents listening. Make sure your kids are studying too. And thank you to the two West High School students for coming up in this time also. Good finals coming up. But to bring up a subject that is very important in terms of drug use, substance abuse, vaping, especially in the bathrooms. I understand that there are many concerns out there in regards to the bathrooms. And I would like to ask, on top of what Dr. Crumpy is, I think President Don Lee mentioned that Dr. Crumpy, we have that program coming that addresses one part of substance abuse. And if staff can maybe look into what more they can do on top of the programs coming up that we already have. Something, especially in those bathrooms, I've passed by some of them sometimes, and it's pretty bad. This is all before.
Torrance High in 1974.
Actually, that was President Lee himself creating the bad odors in there, probably with some song that was going on. But anyway,
I wasn't there.
Yeah, I'm getting him back for you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Anyway, but if there's something we can do about it, if we can look into, especially those high school bathrooms, and my concern is that was in the high schools back then, not in middle school. Nowadays, that kind of activity is starting a lot more in middle schools, and from vaping to all these fancy gadgets. It looks like a thumb drive, but apparently it's a vaping pen. This is all the stuff that I hear among the PTA and among the parents. So hopefully we can do something about that, look into it. Dr. Stowe, if we can do that. Pointing you out. And then, so thank you for high school students for coming and bringing that up. And then another thing I just want to mention, if we can look into those, how the internet was down and the classroom phones not being able to function. When you brought up safety, I'm very concerned about that. As a former felony prosecutor, I always want to make sure that we're doing what is best in terms of safety, communication, and everything. So, Ms. Mara, I know you're like our expert in the field. I go to you for anything like that. So if there's something we can do about that, if you can look into it, that's great. Thank you. And that's it for me today.
Mr. Gerson.
Thank you. Happy New Year. I appreciate everyone who stayed for the whole time. It's nice seeing your faces. We had 4 high school students speak, and thank you for being courageous in speaking. I wanted to thank Arnold Elementary for inviting us to their family fun night. We had fun at Dave & Buster's. My kids loved it, and I hope you'll invite me again. And on February 19th, Madrona is going to be doing the same thing, having a Dave & Buster's school spirit night, and hope to see them there. And tomorrow you can support the North High School girls water polo team with a Panda Express restaurant fundraiser. So thank you.
Thank you very much. I've got a couple of things, and we'll make it quick. First thing is, we probably time for a joint city council, school board committee meeting, kind of talk about the next iteration of the joint use agreement. It'll take 6 months to schedule it, but, probably start now. Maybe we'll get it done by the end of the year. So that's number one. Number two is, after going to the school board conference in San Francisco, I sat in on a meeting with a group, the school district actually by the name of, I think it was Gilroy, but it could have been somewhere else, or Hollister or something. I knew it was something, clothing or garlic or something. But they did something innovative. They came up with what was called a strategic communication plan. And it kind of goes back to, what I do, which is selling things, but they kind of sell the district, but they have an overarching brand, and then they kind of works down, and it's very, at least from my end of the world, how I look at things, kind of a nice way to present what we do and how we do in the community. And I really came to the realization of that when I looked at the last election, when basically 3 out of 4 people that voted in that election had never voted in the school board election before, because it was always in the odd year in case of the even year. And I'm not sure I think we communicate okay to the parents. I think we communicate okay to the PTAs and who we, do business with every day. I'm not sure we communicate well to the community as a whole. Now we've passed bonds, we've done those kinds of things. I think they're receptive to our message. I think we kind of fall into that trap of kind of just talking to everybody internally as opposed to externally. So I'd kind of like to see what we can do insofar as looking at a strategic communication plan and how we can communicate better to the community as a whole, all the stakeholders. There was one great line which says, the community will be talking about you no matter what, whether you're communicating with them or not. And I kind of went, yeah, that's right. So, we need to look at that. And one little thing that we could probably start to do tomorrow is every school that we have has a marquee. Some electronic, some are the old school letters. And they're very good at saying testing is this day, and, it's minimum school day that day, and those kinds of things. I think it'd be better for the community as a whole to know what special things that school is doing that they could put on the marquee, and change it every couple of weeks or whatever it may be. Maybe they've won an award, maybe something exceptional has happened at the school, maybe something along those lines has happened. And, the parents coming in and out, dropping off the kids will see it, but everybody else driving through the neighborhood is going to see it, especially some of the schools that are on major thoroughfares. So maybe, I know that's, maybe dumping a bit on the principals to do this, but I think as we look at how we communicate with the community as a whole, that's an easy thing I think we can do and use all the time. I just think of the one at Torrance High and the one at South High, the one at North High, certainly are in front of major thoroughfares, West High even a little bit. So maybe that's a conversation that, maybe at the next principals meeting or something that can be talked about.